welcome back to the Middling Along podcast. I'm your host, Emma Thomas, founder of Managing the Menopause and the Triple Shift. And my guest this time is Nicky Denson-Elliott, who's a serial entrepreneur, founder of the Wilder Collective, host of the Women's Business podcast and mum of two. She's all about lifting the voices of female founders and empowering her community of women to break down conventional norms and become free to explore the lives and careers they want. Through her podcast and public speaking, she explores the topics of anti-female programming and internalized misogyny, and we'll get into some of that later. But welcome to the podcast, Nicky.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was just thinking this morning as I was working out and kind of random thoughts, it would be so nice to have some kind of Wayback type machine where you could, that would remind you how you first kind of became aware of somebody, whether it was on Instagram or LinkedIn, or whether you'd met them at a networking meeting. Because I honestly can't remember when I started following you, but maybe it was to do with your podcast. But that, in terms of your entrepreneurial journey, that wasn't what came first. How did your you call yourself a serial entrepreneur, so tell us a little bit about that kind of breadcrumb trail of kind of there to here.
Yeah, so I would say that I've got entrepreneurship in my blood. My dad ran his own business for 40 odd years, and my mum, even though she was a civil servant when she went back to work, actually had quite random flashes of like moments of entrepreneurialism and working with my dad on various things. So I think it was in me to do it. And I started my first business when I was about 26 or 27, and that was an events business. My background was in events. So I started my own business after about 5 years in the industry, which was pretty bold on reflection. And I didn't then start another business until quite a lot of years later, after my kids were born. When my youngest was born, it was the pandemic. I was on maternity leave from my big job, and I made the decision to start a unisex kids clothing brand because I have a girl and a boy, and I found many frustrations as soon as my boy was born around not being able to pass his sister's clothes down to him. And that is something that evolved into where I am now. The podcast came off the back of meeting amazing women running their own businesses like I was, and just thinking, how did I not know these women existed? Like, where have they been? Like, where is this world kind of hiding? And so the podcast was a way to share their stories, lift their voices in a very male-dominated space, not just podcasting, but business specifically. And off the back of the podcast, I launched my online community, which is called the Wilder Collective. And that is a safe space for female and feminist founders and freelancers to exist online, share the real business journey. It's not a space to sell and talk about 10K months and scale. It's a space to exist as you are, share ideas. Yes, you can find people to work with, you can find people to collaborate with, you can find recommendations, but you can also come and talk about trash TV or how much your kid annoyed you this morning. And it's just a place to like share real life, really. And it's all been an evolution of, over the last 5 years, basically.
And I think there's a lot of that kind of, like you were talking about, whatever, 6-figure, 7-figure businesses and kind of hustle culture amongst sort of founders and entrepreneurial. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you've been very open and honest about your reality. And I think having somebody be that open and honest then kind of gives permission to other people to go, yeah, this is really hard, and this is I failed at this, but now I've pivoted and I've tried this, and I think that's what people find so refreshing about you is your sort of openness and your honesty about what's kind of happening behind the sort of the shiny shop front, if you like.
Yeah, well, that's encouraging. And also, it's not strategic. It's just who I am. He's a very, very honest person. But I think, I've had to challenge my own definitions of success starting this business, because I was caught up in, the notion that money and status equal success and happiness. And when my salary dropped to zero, after I gave up my big job and started my business, I had to question that. And that was hard because of the society we exist within. But I've essentially just taken people on that real journey, and I can't say I've cracked it. I can't say I never look sideways at other people. I don't compare myself to other people. Of course I do. But I have lots of successes in my business, but I don't pay myself very much. So, and that's not like a badge of honor. You know, I think that I do good work and I should be compensated for it. But I'm realistic about being in a new startup kind of growth phase. And so I just think it's okay to share the whole journey rather than just the destination.
And there's a lot of unlearning, as you say, about that kind of, and it's something similar happened to me, kind of getting made redundant from a reasonably well-paid job. I mean, you know, we're not talking hundreds of thousands of pounds, sadly. But yeah, it's like, who are you without that nice, comfortable salary and that nice kind of fancy sounding job title and your kind of corporate infrastructure and all of the stuff that goes with it that society says, you know, you've arrived, you've achieved something, you're a success. You know, other people look at that and think, oh, you know, she's got a really good job. And actually, when all of that is stripped away, you feel very exposed, don't you?
You do, because I think, yeah, like we said, there's so much conditioning that goes into what you should be doing, especially for me, you know, reaching my 40s. All my friends have been in their careers for the best part of 20 years. So they're all earning certain amounts, reaching certain job titles, and I went back to zero. So I had to redefine success on my own terms for my own sanity and for my own good. And I love my work and I get to do really, really fun things. And, you know, because of capitalism, I do need money. So hopefully that will come in time. But I'm realistic about the fact that you just don't turn on a tap with stuff like that. And I'm not, I don't resent anyone who wants the 10K months and things, but I don't try not to chase the vanity metrics and try and just think about work that I feel drawn to, you know, saying no to as much as I say yes to, in finding that alignment of what's right for me. Not easy and not always successful, but that's what I try to be guided by.
And for you, I put you on the spot. What's the most joyful element of what you do, and what would you say is the hardest?
I love the connection that I get with people through my work, either through the podcast or through the community. Sometimes someone will put a post in the community, and before I even get a chance to respond, loads of people have rushed to respond and been super supportive and put their 2 pence in. And then I go to it. I did it this morning. I went to one. Somebody had been reaching out and sharing really vulnerably. There was 17 comments on it by the time I got there. And I was like, this is exactly what's really magical about this space. And for me, getting to do that online and then getting to do it offline as well with people in person is amazing, because I think when you work on your own, you know, you asked me what's hard. Working on your own can be really, really hard. There are aspects of running a business that you have to do that you don't want to do, that are really boring, like your bookkeeping.
I hear you.
Or constantly shouting into the void with creating content. Sometimes you're in flow with that stuff and you know you've got loads to say, and that definitely is me. And sometimes I'm like, oh, you know, I've got to stay visible, I've got to get out there. And I find that really challenging. But I think I remind myself that having a business is hard and fun and brilliant, and both those things can be and should be true at the same time. And I think that on the days where I'm finding it hard, I'm like, nobody in any job finds it easy all the time. I wouldn't imagine. And also, if you're going to start a business, you have to be prepared for pain, but the pain is worth it because what you're building is yours. So that's what I try to remind myself of. Yeah, sometimes I just want to, you know, sit in a hole and rock quietly. But I kind of do that because it's my business. If there's a time when I'm really, really not feeling it, I will give myself permission to be like, who said I have to always be on? You know, the patriarchy or like the society we exist within, but this is my business, my choice. So I'm going to take a step back. And that's something else that I've had to learn.
Mm. And you mentioned kind of the patriarchy. That's that and the sort of internalized misogyny are something that you have been writing a lot about recently, and have been sort of, I think people are picking up on you're being a kind of somebody who has a lot to say in that space. So if people haven't heard of the term internalized misogyny before, because I know that you have sort of been asking around even in your community about what else could we call it, but what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think internalized misogyny, people are like, oh, what are you talking about? Because it's two sort of long words mashed together and it just sounds a bit confusing. But internalized misogyny, everyone will be familiar with misogyny, right? The hatred of women. But internalized misogyny is that internal self-hatred that women can feel about themselves because of external stuff. So the way that we, price ourselves, the way that we think about our body image, our aging faces, our grey hair, anything where we are being incredibly self-critical and judging ourselves by really high and harsh standards, that is the voice of internalized misogyny. And when I did start asking my community about this, I was saying things like self-hatred, and everyone was like, oh, that doesn't resonate for me. And I get why, because self-hatred sounds incredibly strong. And I don't think many people, thankfully, actively hate themselves. But what I'm trying to get at is that there are a huge amount of behaviours that women have that do indicate that there is some self-hatred. It's deep-rooted, it's not surface level, but it's their sort of inner monologue and the way that they talk to themselves, the way that they judge themselves, and the way they judge other women as well, because that's part of it. And the way that men can have internalized misogyny as well. They can have externalized misogyny where they show it, but they can also think that women are less good at risk or less good with money or less good at driving. All of those things are internalized misogyny, these assumptions that we have about women essentially being inferior. And that is something that really I've learned about through my work over the last 5 years. I would say I've always been a feminist, but I don't think I really was and really understood it until I got into my work now and learned so much. So that's why it's my jam. It's just like once you start to learn it, there's a certain amount of freedom because you realise that it's not you, it's your conditioning, and that's very liberating.
Mm. And how do we sort of deprogram, decondition ourselves? What are the sort of the sort of steps that you personally are kind of taking to flip that around?
Yeah, it's interesting. So a lot of people say to me, oh, I do this, and then they start beating themselves up for it. And I'm like, no, like you can't make it another thing to hate on yourself about. What you need to do is notice first. And noticing is the first step. And for people who don't understand this and are learning about it for the first time, if they're like, oh, yeah, I do that, or yeah, my mum could never sit still and now I can't sit still and I'm showing my kids that I can't sit still and I'm being super mum and all of this impossible stuff, if you notice it, that is the first step. So I would say go easy on yourself because it's not easy moving through the world like this. But when you do notice yourself having those kinds of behaviors, can you stop and sort of question it? Ask yourself, like, where is this coming from? Is this me? Or is it my conditioning? Do I really believe this? And ask, if there was a man in this situation or you have a male partner, are you holding them to those standards? Are they beating themselves up if they're not constantly on the move or emptying the dishwasher instead of having a cup of tea? Because it's crazy what women can beat themselves up for, especially with work-life balance in the modern world where we have an
There's
expectation
almost an
and a need.
infinite number of ways that we can feel guilty or not good enough.
Yeah, and we need dual income households, right? We're in an economy that requires dual income households. But the statistics show that even when women are out earning their male partners, they're still doing the bulk of the unpaid labour. So the people that argue, oh, he's the breadwinner, but I do this, that's fine. There are households like that. But even in the households where the woman is the breadwinner, she is still doing the bulk of the unpaid labour. So that shows that there is a conditioning issue, like a gender conditioning. And I think if you understand that isn't actually how it has to be, like that might be how it is in this house, but why is it like that in this house? You have to take responsibility for letting some of that go. And that is hard, but it leads somewhere. There is progress to be had.
And so I also have a son and a daughter, but mine are a bit older. They're about to turn 15 and 12. And I think I've got some work to do in terms of that can, like, I already see the differences between the things that my daughter, who's the younger one, will sort of offer to do, or the way that she speaks about, even just sort of things like laying the table for dinner, or, helping out around the house, doing kind of something unbidden, if you like. So I can already see the divide there. So I'm quite, and that's interesting, because I wonder if my husband is thinking the same thing now. Has he noticed? Has he thought, oh, that's something that I need to do something about? Or is it something else that I'm picking up? So yeah, you can kind of go down a whole rabbit hole with these things, can't you?
Yeah, and I think when you have kids, it brings it into sharp focus, because some people, if they want to martyr themselves to the cause of doing all the unpaid labour and being resentful and feeling like crap about it and hating it, but never doing anything about it, that's up to them. I don't think it's sensible, but it's up to them. But when you tell people your kids will turn out like this, what you're modelling to your children will impact them. And when you tell them, was this modelled to you? What was your mum like? Then the penny starts to drop. And we're all so worried about our kids. Of course we are. So some women can't do it for themselves, but they can do it for their kids. For me, you should be doing it for yourself. That's part of it. You absolutely deserve to do it just for yourself. But if that feels too hard, think about your kids, your daughters especially. Do you want them to grow up, and if they're heterosexual, enter a relationship and a household where they fall into this trap? No, you don't want that for them. And I don't want that for my kids. And having a girl and a boy is like a social experiment. I love it and find it really interesting the way we talk about gender in the home. Yesterday my daughter went out for a bike ride with my husband, and so my son and I were folding the washing and hanging the next washing out, and he was loving it and getting involved in that task. And just more of that. Like, he's capable of doing it, as is my husband, and my husband does do it. So, you can do these things in small ways, but they make big differences, because this is the conditioning that will go in for our kids.
Let's move on if we can. I want to talk about the research that you've been doing with another past podcast guest, Leela Ainge, who's also part of your community.
Yeah.
Looking at it gloriously titled Good Girl Economics. So tell us a bit more about how that came about. What is it? And why is it important?
Yeah, so I've known Leela for a while, and I had said to her, I'd really love to do some research around internalized misogyny, but I'm not an academic. I don't know where to start. And Leela is a very bright woman, and she's studying for her PhD, and her jam is imposter phenomenon, as she calls it. So kind of rebranding imposter syndrome. And there was lots of adjacent themes, obviously, in terms of the way that women feel about themselves. So I asked her, do you think we could commission some research? And she was like, how about we do it together, as opposed to getting a university behind us or something to begin with? I will make sure that it's all legit in terms of like research, that we get a big enough sample size, and that we speak to the right people in the right way, ask the right questions, so that it's like psychologically rich, and we can say we've got enough research here. So she is brilliant and clever and did all of that stuff. Then she said to me, what do you want to find out? Like, what's the hypothesis? What are we trying to prove here? And essentially the research is about how internalized misogyny shows up specifically for women working for themselves, about what they charge and how they decide what they charge, how they feel about other women around them, how they feel when they see women being what they perceive to be successful, loud, taking up space, confident, how they feel about themselves. And we dug into all of that with qualitative and quantitative research. And it's just been just so fun for me to get to do something like that, and just incredibly valuable, insightful. So yeah, it was like a summer project for the pair of us. And now we're like really getting into the nitty gritty of releasing the results.
Was there anything particularly surprising that came out of it for you?
Not really. I mean, it proved my hypothesis that women are not, charging enough. They're not confident enough. They do judge other women around them. I think the thing that did surprise me a little bit is when I was doing the qual research and I was interviewing women in depth, I was asking them about how they set their rates. And a lot of people said, yeah, I look at what other people are charging. And I was like, do you look at what men are charging in your field? And so many of them were like, oh, no, hadn't even thought of that. They're not looking at what men are charging in their field.
Wow.
And for me, it perpetuates the issue, because the gender pay gap is biggest in women who work for themselves. When women set their rates, they charge less. So we wang on about the gender pay gap and it's a problem in the conventional workplace, but we're the problem. And that's because of internalized misogyny and because of our, gender confidence gap. And so I suppose I was just shocked, because I just thought logically, if you were setting rates, you would look at what men and women were charging. But it just spoke volumes that women are looking at what women are charging, and some of them are not even thinking about looking at what men are charging. That keeps us in our silos, and that keeps us with much lower rates, because you're looking at people who are already setting their rates much lower. So that wasn't, it was a bit of a surprise, but also it was just really stark and a bit sad, but also exciting that we can shine a light on this and be like, come on, like, you've got to look at everyone's rate.
There's practical things you can do.
Yeah, you've got to find that confidence somewhere and start charging what you're worth.
That's so interesting. And people kind of my age, so sort of that 50 plus bracket, is the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs. And so I think, if there are people listening to this who are sort of thinking about setting up on their own, or they're fairly kind of new to building a business, I guess that is the best possible time to kind of to get in there and make sure that actually what you're charging, if you're charging for your time, personal time, rather than for a product, is competitive across the board, and not you're not kind of lowballing yourself.
Absolutely. And I think, obviously, like, you understand perimenopause and that life change, and women who are 40, 50 plus, in terms of their work, they've got 20, 30 years under their belts, most likely. They've got real skills, real knowledge that is worth money, is valuable to people, but they're also going through challenging times hormonally. Confidence can be hugely, hugely knocked. So I'm not just being like, just charge loads of money. Like, I know, because I'm on HRT, I'm in perimenopause, I have been through horrific periods of anxiety. So I'm looking at it from the point of view of like being that person who's in it. And that's always the angle I come at it from. I haven't reached enlightenment. I haven't fixed myself. I don't charge a fortune. I don't charge enough, I don't think, for my community. I'm victim of exactly the same issues. What I want to do is shine a light on it and say, it's okay that you do this. Like, it's okay that you don't charge enough, as in, it's not your fault, kind of thing, to use like therapy speak, but you do have to take responsibility for it. And that's the difference. Once you understand what's causing it and your conditioning and stuff, you can take responsibility for it and you can make things better for yourself. No one else is going to. So it's on you to do that. And you're in a phase of life where you have got tons of experience. You've got tons of skills. Don't, hide your light under a bushel.
But by the same token, I think it is, if you're starting something completely new, it is incredibly scary. And there is that sort of tendency to kind of think, oh, well, if I'm just starting out, so I won't charge as much because I want business. I want to be able to win business. I want business to come in, or just that sort of comes back, I suppose, to the sort of imposter feelings again, doesn't it? It's like, well, who am I to be charging, as much as that person over there, particularly, if that person is a man, as you say. So
Yeah.
we're kind of, it's so nuanced, isn't it? And
It is,
actually,
and people's external perceptions of us. I did a post that absolutely flew on LinkedIn and Instagram about, when people say you're smashing it, and I was like,
can we
thanks.
ban that? We need to ban that word.
Well, yeah, and it's, I get that it's supposed to be supportive, but I think we can do better than that, because it's like so much of us have got so much going on. There's so much happening under the surface. And when people say you're smashing it, we actually feel more impostery. We're not like, yeah, I am smashing it. We're just like, oh my God, if only you knew, the medication I take, the elderly family members I'm dealing with,
state of my dining room floor.
yeah, exactly. What my friends are going through, what my kids are going through. Like it's too sort of reductive to say that. It's like
very one-dimensional, isn't it?
very one-dimensional, exactly. Yeah, and that can be really challenging. But I think that imposter feelings are normal, and they show that you really, really care about what you're doing, and you have to make friends with them. I mean, I've got someone running a workshop at my large event who sent me a message and was like, oh, I saw what everyone else is like. I saw who else is running workshops, and I thought I should change mine, and no one's going to want to come to mine. And I can't tell you, like, this woman is amazing. She has had an incredible business journey over the last couple of years. She's got tons of insight. She's got loads of social proof of that insight. She's got the income to back it up as well. I was like, what the hell are you worried about? But no one is immune. So hopefully that's a comfort.
Yeah, I mean, it's any time that you're putting yourself out there and your work as an individual without that sort of comfort blanket, if you like, of a company, like a company in kind of corporate in inverted commas, there's huge vulnerability, isn't there? It's like, it's almost like, well, I'm having a party. Is anyone going to come? Am I going to be just sort of standing in front of an empty room, or the kind of the equivalent if you're, I don't know, running something online, or you're doing a webinar? It's like, is anyone actually going to turn up?
Yeah,
does anybody
absolutely
want what I'm offering?
Yeah, totally. I think it's just totally normal to feel like that, but making friends with it a little bit and just being like, no, this is here to help me. This is because I care about my work and I want to do well. I read something at the weekend talking about how everybody's taking beta blockers now.
Oh God, are they?
I love beta blockers. I do take them. And when my anxiety really flared up, they were an absolute godsend. But it is interesting how sometimes as humans we can want to numb all feelings that are uncomfortable. And actually, some of the doctors interviewed were saying, like, anxiety is a helpful and normal emotion as long as it's not out of control. Like if you feel nervous before a public speaking gig or nervous before an event you're hosting, that is okay. That is normal. That is useful because your body will give you the adrenaline to get through that and perform well. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Where would you like the sort of the good girl economics research to go next? Is it a sort of springboard for something bigger?
I think there's going to be so much to talk about off the back of it, and Leela and I are going to be able to say there's research to back this up. This is not just our opinion. This is not a hunch or a feeling. We've got the research to back it up, and I really hope that it reaches as many women as possible and will help them go, A, I'm not alone in this. That's always helpful. And B, this is a thing. This is a kind of phenomenon of its own. How can I use it to inform my work, the way I think about women, the way I charge clients, all of that stuff? So, first and foremost, I want it to be helpful to women on the ground practically. I want it to help them in their businesses. But I think there may be more research we can do off the back of it and use it as a springboard. And that's Leela's area of expertise. And yeah, I'd love to talk about it on my podcast. I'd love to get some coverage of it, just to get it out there, like I said, because the last research that was done in this area is incredibly outdated. No one's really done anything for well over a decade. So I'm hoping that people will see it and be like, oh, this is actually useful, this is informative, this is helpful, and I can take it into my work, and who knows from there.
Will you ultimately be publishing some of the results on your website, which we'll put in the show notes links to?
Yes, we will be publishing stuff. When I have a moment, I would love to try and write up a white paper around it or something, a bit of a sort of deeper dive beyond just the stats and stuff. I think that it has potential to go further, but it's just, like when. But yes, absolutely, stuff will go on the website for sure.
Brilliant. So good point to tell everyone where they can find you in online spaces.
Yes, so my website is thewildercollective.co.uk, and you can find out more about the community, me and the podcast there. It's a bit of a work in progress. On Instagram, I am wilder.ones, and on LinkedIn, I am Nicky Denson-Elliott with 2 L's and 2 T's. And come and connect, say hello, find me, hang out. I always like saying hi to new people.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nicky. Obviously, we'll put all of those links in the show notes. People can hopefully find you, follow you, hear about all of the good girl economics research as you kind of unpack and contextualize all of that. But thank you for a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Emma.
Thanks for listening to the Middling Along podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please go and leave us a review over at Apple Podcasts. You can check out the full back catalogue of all our episodes over at middlingalong.com. You can also find out more about my work as a coach. Go to www.thetripleshift.org.